What movie trilogies are the definition of this meme? The easiest answer, in my opinion, is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. All three of these films are absolute perfect 10 out of 10 movies. Peter Jackson and the entire cast were just perfect in all of these movies and really just crafted a perfect world. I honestly don't know if we'll ever see another trilogy of movies that's this consistently amazing and lives up to the epicness of this. The only one I feel like that has a possible chance is maybe the Spider-Verse or Dune trilogies. Next up, we got the Star Wars OG trilogy. I used to not be the biggest fan of Return of the Jedi, so I wouldn't have put it on this list, but I just rewatched all these OG movies like a couple weeks ago. Well, I've always loved the first two movies. Return of the Jedi really just clicked for me on this one. I still don't think it's as good as the other two, but it still has some of the greatest Star Wars moments of all time in it. Of course, it helps this trilogy that it has The Empire Strikes Back in it, which is just straight up one of the greatest movies ever created. And there's just something so magical about this trilogy that no matter how good some other Star Wars movies like Rogue One or Revenge of the Sith, things like Andor and The Mandalorian, they'll never just live up to this original trilogy in my opinion. These three will forever be the best Star Wars films. The Back to the Future films absolutely deserve to be in this conversation. These are three bangers of movies that are all-time classics. They're super funny and still hold up great to this day. This is one of those trilogy that you could ask a million different people what their favorite movie from it is, and people could say 1, 2, or 3, and I'd understand the reasoning for all of them because they are all just absolute masterpieces. And because these movies are all so amazing and still hold up great to this day, like they don't look or feel dated at all, the humor still hits, I really hope this is one of the franchises Hollywood leaves alone and we don't try to remake. Because if one of these fake YouTube trailers with Tom Holland and Back to the Future 4 ever come true, I'm gonna absolutely lose my mind. Of course, you know, I gotta mention the Modern Planet of the Apes trilogy. These are absolute masterpieces again and start one of the greatest protagonists of all time with Caesar. What's really crazy about this is from Dawn to War, the movies are completely different in tone, style, and everything, and a lot of that is obviously because of a new director coming in. The franchise just evolves so quickly throughout these three movies, but yet they're all still so amazing in their own right. It's really just impressive storytelling, and I also gotta give credit to the CGI and motion capture in these movies because this has some of the best special effects of all time in my opinion. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but if you didn't cry at the end of War of the Planet of the Apes, you might just be a robot that cannot experience human emotions because this just hits so hard. Guardians of the Galaxy is another trilogy I kind of had to revisit recently because I never was the biggest fan of Volume 2. I always thought it was like a okay film, but definitely the weakest of the three, and I still think it is the weakest. But upon the last rewatch, I really appreciated it a lot more, and I think getting to see the full picture from Guardians 1 to Volume 3, it really just lets you appreciate the story that James Gunn was able to tell. He just understood these characters so well. Literally every single character in the Guardians has an amazing arc, even though they kind of had to take a detour and go off into the Avengers films and stuff. James Gunn still kept the story true to these characters in his films, and it was absolutely perfection from him. Of how weak a lot of the modern MCU movies were, I was kind of worried about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. How is he going to deal with the stuff from Endgame? Was he going to be too focused on leaving for DC after this project? But no, he gave us an absolute perfect emotional ending for all these characters. And these movies really just have such a fun vibe and atmosphere around them that a lot of other superhero movies just can't capture unless they're also made by James Gunn. So I really can't wait to see what he does with the new DCU after seeing his work on these. Speaking of superhero trilogies, I gotta put the Dark Knight trilogy in here. I know there's a lot of people now that hop on the cool opinion of saying, oh, The Dark Knight Rises is a bad movie, it's a mess. I'm sorry, I just simply can't agree with you. Is it a little messy, kind of overfilled? Yes, but I still think it is a great movie. Tom Hardy as Bane is incredible, and Bruce Wayne's arc in it is just perfection. And then of course you have Batman Begins, which is a perfect Batman origin story, and then you get obviously Liam Neeson and both Cillian Murphy as two villains in it. And then The Dark Knight is just on a level of its own, somehow ups the stakes with the villains with both Joker and Two-Face, and on its own is just one of the greatest action and thriller films ever created. I know a lot of people hate on the Christian Bale Bat voice, but I think outside of that, he is an incredible Bruce Wayne and a very good Batman. And now it's probably a good time to mention this list is not in order. I'm just putting out a bunch of perfect trilogies in my opinion. I would definitely have this over things like Guardians if I was ranking them. I know I'm kind of cheating on this one because there are more than 3 movies, but originally it was just a trilogy of the Indiana Jones films, and I think those first 3 films are absolute perfection. Let's just ignore the last 2 that came out because they're very far from perfect. Because while Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the greatest movies of all time, I think if you ask most people, they would put it in there in like their top 100 films ever created. They somehow followed this up with 2 more perfect films in Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade. And let's just be honest, the reason this trilogy is as amazing as it is because Harrison Ford is just so good and iconic as his character. It's his favorite character of all time that he's ever played, and you can definitely tell on screen that he just loves being this guy. Yes, another superhero movie is making this list. I think the Captain America trilogy deserves to be up here because yes, the first Avenger I give maybe like an 8 out of 10, but the next 2 I think are absolute masterclass films. Because The Winter Soldier is easily the best MCU film ever created in my opinion. I don't think that's ever going to change for me unless we get something really amazing with like Spider-Man 4. It also has some of the best action I think that we've ever seen in the MCU or just superhero movies in general. It is just so exhilarating of a film. And Captain America Civil War, I know it's kind of like an Avengers 2.5 film, but I don't really care. It's still still an amazing movie, and yes, Captain America is at the center of the story still, so he deserves the credit for it. It's literally his film, he's in the name of it. The only somewhat beef I have with the Captain America trilogy is that Captain America's story starts in the first Avenger, but it ends in Endgame, so I know that's still a part of the MCU, and he got an amazing ending. This is kind of the thing that always bugs me about the MCU, and it's only getting worse and worse the more interconnected things are, is that you can't really just watch just the trilogy to get the full story anymore, because like if you just watch these 3 movies, you don't get the end of Cap's story. Kind of the same thing with Guardians. Like you can't watch Guardians 1, 2, and 3 and understand the full story, because you need to watch Infinity War and Endgame in between to actually understand what's going on. That's just kind of a pet peeve. It doesn't take away from the greatness of this trilogy and these 3 standalone movies. Hard to say that the Before trilogy, consisting of the films Before Sunrise, Sunset, and Midnight, is underrated, because everybody that watches them thinks they're absolute masterpieces, but I do think they're definitely underpopular. If you love any sort of drama or romance films, or even Richard Linklater, he just did the movie Hitman on Netflix. If you watch that, I mean, these are very different but still amazing films. He's a great director. These films really are just masterful at capturing feelings and emotions like a lot of other movies really fail. I'm not someone that's really big into like romance films, but these just work for me. For the last one on this list, I want you to comment down below any trilogy that you think is absolute perfection that I did not include in this video. There's tons more out there that I didn't include, so let me know what you think deserves to be on this list, and make sure to subscribe for more.